Truth Seeker and/or its affiliates are not responsible for any strange phenomena that may occur during or after listening to this podcast, which may include the following: heightened senses of awareness, psychic abilities, UFO sightings, alien contact, time loss, out-of-body experiences, ringing in the ears, ESP, lucid dreaming, increased synchronicities, astral projection, telepathy, stronger intuition, levitation, miraculous healings, and/or remote viewing. Please be advised to listen at your own discretion.
Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? To a place to walk on troubled seas, faith to stand when I don't believe. I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come?
You are now locked into the Truth Seeker podcast.
Gargoyles! Psychics! Everything's ungodly! Dark savage!
Streaming live at truthseeker.com.
She's not a Christian!
Give it up, y'all.
Your portal to the paranormal, esoteric, and all things spiritual.
She's tampering in dark-sided stuff!
And now, your host, Truth Seeker.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Truth Seeker. This is the Truth Seeker podcast. Excited and delighted to be with you guys again today, sharing this sacred space with you all. We got some good subject matter that we're going to be discussing today with my guest. Before we get into that, I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who is supporting my work via Patreon. We are listener supported, and I could not do this without your help. So thank you guys for partnering with me, coming on board to help fund this thing financially, the music, the podcast, the meditations, everything that I'm putting out. Thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. I want to give a quick shout out to some of the latest patrons within the last week or so. Shout out to Robbie Bowen. Shout out to you, brother. Shout out to Noah, Monica Bendevez, Jeremy Smith, and Debbie George. Thank you guys for coming upon this boat with me and sailing. It's awesome funding this thing. If you would like to support, head on over to patreon.com/truthseeker. There you get access to my entire discography of music. It's 200 plus songs, digital access codes for the meditations. You get discounts and all that kind of stuff. And you get access to our Thursday night School of the Mystics. So if you're looking for community, it's the community aspect to what we're building here on the podcast, looking for like-minded people to build with. You get access to the Discord, all that cool stuff that's available, all for supporting at any level of giving. Patreon.com/truthseeker. Thank you guys again from the bottom of my heart. It means the world. Today's guest, hypnotist, Jason Linett. Jason, welcome to the podcast, brother.
Hey, so good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh man, I've been looking forward to this one. Been speaking about it with some of my friends who were stepping out in hypnotherapy. I've been taking some courses myself, and we're all excited about this conversation, man. You actually won Hypnotist of the Year for 2017 from the Mid-America Hypnosis Conference. You've been on TEDx talks. You got so much stuff that you offer. You're killing it on the internet. You type in your name, and there's just pick and choose what you want, man. So you're out there killing it as far as your social presence and stepping out there doing live events and stuff. You actually run, Virginia Hypnosis, so you have your own practice and you have your own building and all that kind of cool stuff. So you're doing it, man. Again, welcome to the podcast, brother. I'm looking to discuss some of this stuff with you.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Yes, that mindset that we can take our skills and bring them out there beyond the one-to-one. So yeah, there's the Virginia Hypnosis, which is the office I'm sitting in right now. But the whole digital side of things, including the book, including the training side of it, the whole catchphrase the world has become a lot smaller. And we've got that opportunity to begin to touch the lives of others in a much more direct way.
It's awesome, man. When we're approaching the subject of Hypnosis. Well, let's don't go there yet. Let's just get a little bit about your background, man. What got you interested in hypnosis to even begin with? Let's just start there.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I started actually my career path in a very different direction. I was working in management in professional theater. So I wasn't acting, directing, or designing. I was the guy behind the curtains calling cues and helping everybody get along, which there's a lot of psychological training right there. And it goes back to the welcome week of my college. And someone came to the university and did one of those stage hypnosis shows. And I'm watching, I'm amazed by it. And it just piqued my curiosity enough to want to go out and learn more. So picking up as many books as I could, going to courses, picking up videos. And admittedly, I was looking for that stage hypnosis entertainment side of it. And all the books I was picking up were all hypnotherapy based. So it wasn't exactly what I was looking for, yet it was fascinating. So I kept looking at it. So the years progressed in the theater world and the professional side. There's Actors Equity Association. That's the union that governs stage actors as well as the stage managers. And I became a member of that in that theater career. Meanwhile, the hypnosis had kind of been growing as a hobby. I was doing some speaking engagements, some presentations. I was working with individual clients. And it really helps to solidify that discovery that just because you're good at something doesn't mean you have to do it the rest of your life. So I found myself on that track to get what I'd perceived to be the dream job in the theater career. And as soon as it was there, it felt like a bit of a kick in the stomach going, I don't want to have this lifestyle anymore. Here's this thing I've been doing part-time and inspiring people, helping them overcome challenges. Yeah, let's go off in that direction and do something very, very out of the ordinary, as it were. So part of that journey has been a lot of speaking engagements, a lot of time working with one-to-one clients. And as you mentioned nicely there in the intro, the opportunity to reach beyond the physical space, whether it's training that I do now all around the world, either in person or remotely, and just that opportunity to, again, take what we can do as a skill or even a service and take that out to a much larger audience. And just that opportunity to take what's working sometimes and reinvent that model time and time again.
It's definitely working, and there's a way to do it, right? It's just not just presenting it. Like, it's a way to present it. I think you're doing a really good job at it with your website. It's phenomenal. Everything that you have to offer, all of the free stuff that you have, just to kind of let people know what you do. It's amazing, man. Moving forward, talking about hypnosis, hypnotherapy, is that the same? Is it one and the same, or is there a difference? Let's just start there.
It's a bit of a funny answer in terms of our inner dialogue. We're basically talking about the same thing. And just to give some of the logistics of things, the word hypnotherapy is a bit under fire in some communities. This dialogue has very little to do with the word hypnosis and practically everything to do with the word therapy. Just that in certain states, therapy is a licensed terminology.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So going back to the early 1950s, hypnosis breaking off as its own separate and distinct profession. So it's where I tend to just subscribe to the word hypnotist, though if I'm working with someone one-to-one in terms of a changing modality of work, we can brand that as hypnotherapy. Yet again, I'm using the words. There's also a small business element of that about 100,000 plus people are searching for hypnotist and less are searching for hypnotherapy. So I bow down.
Let me write that down. Moving forward.
Yeah. So looking at it again in terms of, let's unpack that definition for some of the people that are new to this, because you ask even 100 hypnotists, what's the definition of hypnosis? You might get a bunch of different answers. It all comes down to a very simple concept. We would often define it, this is credited to the late, great Dave Ellman, a practitioner who lived in the early 1900s, who would say that it's the bypassing of those critical faculties of the mind, which that's a lot of technical jargon. What it basically means is automatic response in spite of those things that you're already aware of. So easiest example, driving in a car, you're thinking of everything other than driving in your car. You still end up where you'd like to go. You're watching a movie, it's all fiction, they're actors dressing up and pretending, and yet we still get swept up in the story. Although look at the personal issues that someone will reach out to someone like me to want to address. I work a lot with executives in terms of overcoming a fear of public speaking. And here he is, he knows he's the most qualified person in the room. Person a couple of months ago, his name's on the side of the building and all the payroll stubs. He's got every right to be up there speaking, yet in his words, he's shaking like he's back in his third grade math class. So despite the conscious knowledge, here's this automatic response that's playing out. You might be able to see in the corner the giant jar of cigarettes of people who've thrown them out here.
Wow.
A couple of
Good stuff.
There's a couple more peppered around the space too. And here's that person who consciously knows these things are killing me, and yet they're buying them by the pack and smoking them every single day. So it's that entry point to realize in some way you're already doing hypnosis, and I'm someone who helps you to do it even better. To use those powers for good, as it were.
Yeah, and whether it's, I think a lot of people may think of, the spiritual side of it, which I want to get into that because I kind of approach it from spirituality, but it's something very practical as well, right? Especially when you're talking about, I've heard you say in some of your lectures talking about, basketball players and people who just get in the zone and they find that flow state and they tap in. Like there's a place mentally that even you have to go to enter that. And it's a place of determination. I can do it. I know I can. I know I can. I think I can, or whatever. And telling yourself that when you show up, hey, I've already convinced myself that I'm the man for the job and everything's going to go good, right?
Right. So where we can look at it in terms of, from my perspective of things, it's not so much about what's wrong with you and how are we going to fix that. What's great about you and how do we harness that? How do we put that into use? And you can imagine, I spend time talking to people in business, and part of that mission statement is to realize, okay, here's everything I've done in the shape of my businesses. And I'm in a world where I sometimes have to convince people that I'm not going to hypnotize them to cluck like a chicken or bark like a dog. Not that I've actually ever met someone who's done those things. So it seems the misconception of that is a misconception on its own.
Right.
So if I was able to do these things with that barrier, let's take other people in business, whether they're in music, whether they're in real estate, graphic design, whatever it may be, you don't have the barriers that I've had. And to take some of the principles and the strategies that I've put to use over the years to build what I've built. Although think about it for a moment that oftentimes I'm going into the corporate world. I'm going out there and I'm giving the keynote at a convention or some sort of gathering for their business. And imagine the walls that might be up in terms of hypnosis. And this is that foot in the door to have people realize, don't let the word hypnosis scare you. The most successful people I meet, they're already doing this. They're just perhaps calling it something else. They're doing something consistent to get in that zone. They're doing something consistent to get in that peak performance state of mind. That the salesman is going somewhere in his mind as that phone is ringing, so he is 100% and on the moment that the call connects. That's a lesson I learned from observing actors like 15 years ago, that it could be whatever personal story was going on backstage. The moment they stepped on stage, there was the audience and there were the lights. They had it. So that ability to go into that place in our mind, and it's where I keep using the branding around work smart, to work with purpose, to work with focus, to work with intention, and to be able to actually turn on that state management quality by choice rather than hope it's a good day.
What is it about the point of contact with another person? Like if that, you know what I'm saying? It's something that people can do on their own. They're already doing it, even in, negativity. They're saying, I'm stupid, I'm dumb, I'll never be anything. They're speaking those things over their life, and they're changing the way their mind works or whatever, changing the way that they respond to everything by simply their belief system. This is something that people can harness on their own. But what is it about the point of contact of let me seek out someone to help me, maybe kind of hone in on it? Even if we look into confessionals in the Catholic Church, let me just tell you, let me get it off my chest. I know I'm okay with God or whatever, but let me get it off my chest. And that person who almost acts as a conduit to help you get in that zone. And when you have the jar of cigarettes behind you, it's very similar. I've seen people come to church, right? They'll come to church and they'll have drugs on them, and they'll have guns and all types of things that they leave at the altar. This is where I'm leaving it. This is the point of contact, the point of reference that I need this thing to make up my mind, whether it's the new year to start a resolution. There is this point of reference there. What is it about that of having someone to come to help us with that,
Well, it's where you brought up something beautiful there, which is that there's a terminology we would use of what's called a prestige suggestion. That from a position of authority, someone says something to somebody else and that message sticks. So perhaps it's the parent, perhaps it's the coach, perhaps it's the teacher who says something negative to that person. But we can also look at prestige suggestion as an internal thing. It also could be a very positive thing. The moment someone says to you, you're really talented at this music, you should make it your life's work. And we hear that and go, yes, I'm going to go after that. What you've really helped to highlight there is that I live by the phrase that some people would tell you it takes 30 days to start a new behavior.
Mm-hmm.
I would tell you those people might not be using the best of methods because major life changes can happen in an instant. And if you want a simple example, scan your own internal experiences and think about if there was a moment in a previous relationship where, let's phrase it this way, new information was discovered and that thing was over. That wasn't a sit down and draw out the pros and cons kind of list. Just, nope, I'm out of here. If there's ever been a change in the way that you think about the world around you in terms of even whether it's religion or politics or major belief systems, these are things that we're capable of doing in an instant.
Yeah.
So it's where sometimes let's call it out easily. There sometimes is that moment where the person reaches that point of threshold on their own without having to reach out to someone else. In a slightly indirect way, there's the jars of cigarettes here. I can credit the first smoking cessation success perhaps to when I was maybe 4 or 5 years old. And all I had to say was, I want to go to grandpa's house. He smells bad.
Mm-hmm.
And that was relayed to my grandfather. And he went from cigarettes, cigars, and a pipe every day to throwing all that stuff out. So there's that moment of we sometimes can wait for that catalyst for change. Or as you brought it up, sometimes we can facilitate that catalyst for change. I mean, one of my parts of my backstory is that I tell it as about 6 years ago, I had developed a very embarrassing habit, which wasn't necessarily that I was overeating or drinking or drugs or any of the things you would think of being a habit. Instead, I kept spraining my back. I kept hurting myself by accident because I was weak and I was clumsy, which was pointed out to me by every doctor who I was trying to figure out what's wrong with my back. And they're going, nothing, it's you. So, and it came back to a moment of kind of ignoring that advice for years. And at the time, my son's now 5.5. And at that point, he was a newborn. I'm carrying him up the stairs and I'm winded. I've got to sit down and catch my breath. And here's that moment of just enough is enough. And I've been now ritualistically at a gym in the mornings, building up strength ever since then. It's where people would hear the routine that I do. I'm up around 5 in the morning, typically 5 or 6 days a week. And they would go, how do you do that? And the answer is just, that's what I've been doing now for like 5.5 years. That's just what comes naturally now. So it's where we can look towards that internal source, but sometimes that inspiration comes from an external source. And I'd say to anybody out there, whether it's someone like me, someone like you, or any other position, to recognize that it's actually a position of strength to go, I need assistance with this. I mean, even in terms of business at times, here's a person who knows how to do things that I don't yet know how to do. Yeah. And rather than trying to be all self-righteous and go, oh, I can figure this out for myself. Sometimes here's that person that I paid an amount of money to go, just coach me. Tell me what I need to do. To call up someone I know and just say, hey, point me in the right direction. Hey, look at this. What do you think? That moment of making that ask, as you alluded to, whether it's the moment of going into the church, reaching out to a friend, or whatever these scenarios are, that's actually a starting position of strength. So harness that moment, put that into use. There's no shame in that.
Some of the things you have listed on your website here is just like practical stuff that we all deal with. Like any of us can be a victim of this stuff or be a victor, I guess. Stopping smoking, weight loss, anxiety relief, pain relief, improving confidence, overcoming fear, stress relief. This is stuff that everyone, you know what I'm saying, deals with. Dealing with this stuff, does it work for anything and everything? Like if there's this, okay, I want to do better in my business. How do I retrain my mind that's going to give me results? Does it work with everything, you know? This
is one of my favorite things to talk about, that you could look at, let's set the website aside for a moment. Let's look at the schedule of some of the people I've seen in the last month. Here's a guy who is really successful in his career, yet he has realized there's a sticking point that he's not assertive at all. He's kind of that pushover and people are taking advantage of him. Meanwhile, here's the 13-year-old baseball player who was the star athlete who is now afraid of being hit by the pitch. Here's the person coming in to quit smoking, and now here's the person fear of flying. And that's just this week so far. And you could look at all those things and you're going, you're really supposed to believe that it's going to work for all these things? When we look at personal change, in my opinion, it's all contextual. It all comes down to 4 basic questions. How do you feel now? How would you rather feel? What are those things you're doing now? What are those things you'd rather be doing? So from those perspectives, it's where I live by the idea that there only needs to be one expert in the room. So a couple of years back, a professional golfer calls me up and he's asking me, how often do you play? And I give him the honest answer. Well, I'm the one who, when I'm playing putt-putt with my children, I'm the one asking, can we stop keeping score because they're beating me?
Yeah.
Not my skill. So if you need advice on your swing, clearly you're calling the wrong person. But let me ask you this. You're standing over the ball. How do you feel? Anxious. What are you thinking about? I'm thinking about the one that went in the water about 3 holes ago, and I'm playing the rest of the game trying to catch up. How would you rather be thinking? How would you rather be feeling? And he feeds me that response. He is now writing the process of now taking the 50,000 hours of training and experience and all that I've been through all these years, along with listening and calibrating to him. And it's about custom designing that experience for that gentleman in that moment. So there's a story years ago. I mentioned gymnasts. Years ago, a gymnastics coach read an article about me and just started sending a ton of people. And you try not to play the game that's always the same thing. Yet, hey, I'm a gymnast. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're afraid of flipping backwards in the high beam. Yeah, how'd you know? Because it's always the same thing. And sometimes there's an event. There was a reason why the fear was installed. It's where I do a ton of work with people for public speaking, specifically that person either trying to break out as the entrepreneur or that person who is trying to climb that corporate ladder. And I eventually found the pattern of just saying, look, before we start chatting here on the phone, let me just lay something out there. Are you business owner or employee? And as soon as they say employee, I go, okay, good. So you're looking around, you're realizing there's people you're more qualified than that are excelling within your profession at your business. And you're thinking, why not me? And part of that is that you're terrified to stand out and speak. And they go, yeah, how'd you know? Which you do something enough, you start to notice some trends. Yeah. Everything's always customized. But again, looking at it from that point of view of going, what's the feeling? How do you want to change it? What are the activities? How do you want to change it? And it's from their expertise. They know their situation. They know what they want to achieve. And I'm the one who can help to put the right words, the right techniques in the right order. And really it takes on the respect in our modern era that it's not necessarily into poke fun of it. Not that I'm the almighty hypnotist and I am going to make you do these things. It's instead, let me step into that educator mindset of here's how strongly you can do this for yourself. To build a business now that's based upon raving fans rather than lifelong dependence, that my goal is to look at you as a client and say, professionally speaking, I hope to never see you again, which is where, again, which is why I've got so many referrals as part of the business. But at the same time, it's where in recent years, capturing that same knowledge, whether it's a digital project online, whether it's the book that's coming out very soon, whether it's standing on a platform and delivering that message to many, it's always down to what are those things that you want to change. That's always going to be the catalyst for that. And I tell a quick story here. I think we've got some time for this one, if it's all right. That there's a wonderful hypnotist who passed away a couple of years. Actually, I believe last year. His name was Jerry Kind. He was out of Florida. And I can appreciate the intention behind this. He would tell his students, when someone calls you up for something, tell them, oh, yeah, we work with that all the time. That's easy, which is a great thing to do for somebody. It's building confidence. It's building authority. I was cautious about that because I didn't want to lie to somebody. Yeah. And suddenly the phone rings and this woman is doing the slow reveal. She's not directly saying what her issue was. And as I replay some of her chatter, your imagination may go where mine was going. She's going, well, my husband and I were kind of traditional and, we didn't live together until we got married. And there's some things about him I've come to realize that I think we should work on. And now I'm interjecting going, well, if it's something he needs to address, have him call me. She goes, no, I think it's something that I should work on first, and we're very traditional again. And she's telling, and my mind is going to other things. And I finally go, well, what seems to be the issue? She goes, well, his jaw clicks when he eats and he won't go to the dentist to get that fixed. And the sound is driving me crazy. Could you hypnotize me so his clicking jaw doesn't bother me? And I catch myself slipping and saying, oh, yeah, I work with that all the time. That's easy. To which she, of course, goes, really? I go, no, of course not. However, here's the person with tinnitus, tinnitus, the ringing in the ears, and here's what we can do to alleviate those symptoms. I'm in the Washington, D.C. area. Here's the person who is now being driven crazy by the sound of street noise and planes overhead. And here's how we can tune down the sensitivity of those sounds. The same things I would do with those people, that's what you and I can do together. Make sense? So I'm building the case for the effectiveness of it, but also just at times just throw out the transparency as to here's what we're going to do together, that you're going to learn how to do this for yourself, which, sometimes it is the quote bread and butter of people coming in, anxiety relief. I do a ton of work, again, public speaking issues, stop smoking and so forth. Yet it's where the creativity of the process, the creativity, the confidence, the flexibility of it comes in just by opening up that calibration, listening to the person in front of you. This is the same principle for business. What is that person's specific needs? And if we're a fit for that, feed those needs back through the parameters of what we do. And if we're not a match for that, thank you so much. Perhaps here's a resource that may be a better fit.
That's awesome, man. There's a lot of different points that you made that I want to respond to. One of them being the confidence thing. I remember, and it's been something that's been, been coming up a lot lately of researching hypnotherapy, and then listening to your TEDx talk the other day. You talked about like a lot of the success rate comes from just them believing that you can do it. Maybe even if you can't, maybe if you're taking a shot in the dark, but that shot in the dark is a confident shot in the dark, and they believe that you know what you're talking about. And the success rate for people just simply, okay, I've come to the right guy. They're going to help me, even if you don't know, but you're assertive. You speak with authority, and hey, we're going to help you knock this out. We've dealt with it before. Maybe your first time. We've dealt with it before. It's going to be easy. So that confidence thing is a big one, right? I know you talked, a lot about that in the TED Talk as well, and building that rapport too, right?
Yeah, and I'd give a filter for that. And for those who haven't seen that talk, if you simply go to rethinkingrapport.com, that'll redirect over to YouTube. There's one of my good friends and someone who I considered a mentor as well, who Michael Elner, passed away actually earlier last year. And he would often teach in his thinking that hope is realistic. And I love that as a mindset of someone's initial foot in the door of realizing that they can create that change. My kind of internal dialogue and the confidence is it's not a fake it till you make it. It's instead having the confidence that as soon as I step into the belief system and understanding that if you're my client, if you're my audience, you can do this. I am now projecting that confidence, not so much that I am the one who is so gifted and talented I can help you. It's bringing that confidence into yourself. A friend of mine, we taught a class together in September last year, is down in Austin, Texas, James Hazelrig. I think it was him in a Facebook chat one time. There was someone like business networking or something. They were going, well, I don't know if I believe in that stuff. And his response was beautiful. He goes, it's okay. I believe in you. Yeah. It's like, oh, that's so good. I'm going to give you credit whenever we bring that one up. No, but it's that shared confidence, I think, is the point of view. It's where when you look at any specific change, anything we'd want to address in our lives, confidence is going to play a game inside of that. Whether it's the confidence that either we deserve to pull it off or we actually have the skills to create it, to make it happen, or sometimes even the education is possible in order to make that happen. Yeah. I mean, I've got a book coming out in about 2 weeks at this point, and it's the period about this time last year of going, okay, here's all these ideas that have been floating around, and I want to do this, yet I've never done this thing before. So I need to take some steps to learn what it takes to actually produce the book, but also get it to the visibility that I want this message to have. Kind of back to that dialogue from before, that it's that position of strength to go, I need to find a resource for this. Mm-hmm. So then from that position of passion, from that initial spark, the confidence that, yes, I know I can do this, yet let me borrow some of that confidence from reading this book on how to write, hiring this service that can now take care of the editing, reaching out to these people and say, hey, I wrote about this. Would you write a blurb for the back of the book cover? Yeah. But having at least a set of skills to get there, it has to begin with that confidence, which I think sometimes the most empowering word is the word yet. Just the simple 3-letter word yet, that people often would get stuck by saying, I can't do this. Well, I don't know if I can start a business. I don't know if I can lose this weight. I don't know if I can fix this relationship. If you take all of those negative statements and put the word yet at the end of it, it opens up a loop. It opens up that ability to go, this is now something in process. This is now something I can get better at, to begin that snowball sort of trajectory of improving each and every year.
It's good stuff, man. When we're talking about these, you said that you want, when you have clients, you approach it with, I hope I never have to see you again. We're going to knock it out. There's a sense of confidence there. In hypnotherapy, in a lot of online entrepreneurs, there's this thing about repeat customers, right? And this is something that I'm just not getting into a little bit. It's kind of a hill for me, and people are wanting my advice, and I really don't know what to tell them because it's kind of new for me. Repeat customers, I'm with you, at least in this sense, because I've tried to knock it out with one session. Like I come from the Christian faith healer thing. Let's pray for you, believe it, receive it, run with it, go, and hopefully never have to see you again. Obviously, some things kind of go a lot deeper, and you have to help people walk it out, and so there may be some repeat customers or repeat clients there. How do you approach that moving forward? Is there a lot of repeat clients, or is there a lot of one and done people who come to you?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of moving pieces inside of that question. And there's a model that I teach to anybody who's in any sort of, let's just generalize it, any kind of helping profession, that there's a danger sometimes in the one and done expectation that some things are going to be a process. So when I talk about the stop smoking, that is my nickname for it now is it's a bit of a 2.5 hour adventure. Yet there's an option for additional work if necessary inside of that program. Nearly everything else, and this is the language to model for other folks, which would be, and this is going to work for, this is going to work for massage. This is going to work for counseling. This is going to work for hypnosis. This is going to work for nutritional counseling, business coaching, everything. If you make one adjustment, and not just because it's going to increase your cash flow, but instead because it's going to serve your person even better. Here's the language. So we start with a plan of 3 sessions. And if that's all we need, fantastic. And of course, if there's value in additional work, there's always an option. My goal is to give you the most effective process in the most efficient use of your time. So, and that number that you define can be something that you test over time, and you know your own work better than I would. And I'd say that to anybody in this audience too. The beauty of that is I did not make any big promises there. Now, I have many people that I've seen just those 3 times, and we're all satisfied by it. And now they're out there talking about their result. They're sending referrals. I've got a large referral base in terms of past clients. And that's what's allowing that continuous stream. The other side of it too is that here's that person who it's a little bit more of a journey, or the whole concept of what we call generative change, that now that I've done this, that's now enabling me to do that, now enabling me to do this. I mean,
that's good.
2 quick stories come to mind. That there's a guy, executive, who called up originally for public speaking. And the issue was, he goes, there's a number of positions at work that I'd love to get the promotion for, yet until I become more visible with my speaking and taking more leadership roles, I'm just not going to get those. So we worked together on the speaking, couple of sessions, and the phone rings like 3 years later. And I recognize the guy's name, and I take the call, and hey, how's it going? And I can tell he's smiling as he says this. He goes, I've got a brand new problem. Like, what do you mean? He goes, I'm now having to manage a team of people who don't get along. I got the promotion we were talking about. Now, this promotion is worth like an extra 60 grand a year. So thank you for that. However, I'm now having to manage a very unruly team of people who, he goes, I've got teenage sons, and I don't even have to tell them, look, you don't have to like each other. You just have to work together. He goes, I have to say that at work. He goes, this is a big enough hassle, and the pay raise is big enough that I'm okay with this. He goes, but I'm taking the stress home. Can you help me with that element? But I have to thank you. I wouldn't have this problem if I had not have released the other problem. So that's a place where through the, let's call it out, the evolution of that personal journey, it's a different issue. The same as this is an old story now. Woman who I saw, this dates back to like 2010, 2011. And I love this as a mindset of work on the solution, not the problem. She saw me to quit smoking. Because she quit smoking, she started talking to this guy at like a dog park, and then the 2 of them started dating. The 2 of them talked about how unhappy they were in their government jobs. Here we are in the shutdown, perfect timing for that. Was another one. And here's this moment now where they're going, he goes, I'm a runner. I've always wanted to open a running store. And she's now going, I've always wanted to get back into running. I did that in high school. And now the 2 of them, all these years later, they're married, they've got kids, they're running this entire amazing community out in another state nowadays. And you look at this journey of here's where she is now, there's where she started. this identity is now so far disconnected from the idea of, what if I slip back and have one? So there's places where it may be more of that ongoing journey, but that language, once again, we start with a plan of this many appointments. If that's all we need, fantastic. If there's value in more, of course, that's an option. These are two examples of people I think I saw more than 10 times. And it wasn't that we were doing the same thing over and over. Maybe it'll stick this time. No, it was instead that now we're continuing that story. And even so, if all we're doing is reinforcing the change they've already created, let's stick this in a health coaching category. Well, great. Now that you're eating those healthy foods, what strategies have you found to be effective in doing that? Oh, I'm meal prepping. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. Okay, well, now that you have that in motion, let's now add in these elements. So again, the continuation of the story. So it's where it's a bit of a benefit. It's a service to the person to add a little bit more work, not for the sake of you want to be paid more, but instead to provide a much more well-rounded service, teach them some skills so they can do that on their own.
That's good, man. It's creating new problems. You've created new problems for me, but they're good problems, right? They're good because we've got over the, the stuff that started out big. And I'm kind of learning that too now, because I had someone who just recently came on and purchased a couple sessions from me. And so the first session was like unloading and getting a game plan to move forward, that if we was just to jump into it, it wouldn't be as effective of just, okay, let's run through the motions. We got one session, we got an hour, let's knock it out, versus like, okay, I now have a game plan that I know what we're going to do in these 3 sessions or whatever the case is. That's good stuff. Where does the placebo come into effect with all this? It can be powerful. A lot of people look at it negative, like it's something that doesn't work. But I believe that there's some power in just simply believing, whether it kind of ties into the whole confidence thing, but or someone knowing that all I have to do is come to you and I'm going to be good, whether they believe it coming in. For me, it's an aspect of like if someone pays you their hard-earned money for a service, it's usually they're ready, man. Like they're ready to get rid of that smoking habit. They're looking for help. They're desperate. They're actually paying you for a service. That act of faith, if you will, helps the process go a lot faster versus trying to convince someone, hey, you don't need to smoke anymore. Let me tell you why. And just kind of like trying to convince them out of it. They're already looking for help. So that helps a lot. But where does the placebo tie into everything?
And let's look at that concept from a bigger perspective first, then we're going to get it specific to personal change, which is that our mental expectations are going to be an influence on everything that we possibly do. And here's a simple example. We had a couple of sort of handyman style projects to get done in our home. Just little elements like, here's that light switch that's not working. Could you repair that? Here's this, I'm only 5'4". Here's this attic access that my wife and I can't reach. Can you switch out the door so now we can actually pull it down ourselves? And the contractor that we hired is I've known this guy for 10 years. And the entire way through the project, I am just looking at all the details of things and going, wow, he's really good at this. Meanwhile, my wife, and this is no negativity on her part, he is entirely new to her. And she's looking at it from a slightly more critical direction of going, well, they did touch up the paint around that light, but it's not actually the color paint of our ceiling. It's off a little bit. Let's find the paint in the basement and just touch that up ourselves. That's going to be an easier thing. Meanwhile, I'm in the process of moving my office, and there's this is the wonders of hypnotic language and reframing. What the engineer described as, well, there's a bit of a water activity and plus some there was a water event and organic activity. I'm going, don't dress it up. The ceiling was leaking and you found mold. This has all been remediated very quickly, but it's what's prompting the move. And as I've been rather critical about this crew of people that 4 months later still can't fix the issue, which is why I'm moving, it's where I'm being a little bit more cynical about the work. And I can recognize that I've been doing that, but at the same time, my focus now is on the next phase of things. So my illustration of that is that there's always going to be some sort of mental expectation to something. Let's bring it even into the concept of compliance. You have a personal doctor and you go to them based on the fact that you're sick with something and they say, here, take this series of pills, and maybe it's something like an antibiotic, whatever it may be. You need to continue with all 5 days of this. Even if you feel better, complete the entire medication. the more likely you have a good relationship with the doctor, the more likely you're going to follow through with that. And if for some reason the experience didn't go well, they made you sit in the lobby for an hour and a half, they forgot about your appointment, they said they'd call the prescription in, and you get to the pharmacy and find out, oh, they forgot to, it's not there yet. Now you got to stand there for an hour and wait. Some of our mental expectancy is starting to chip away. So I bring up these other examples because this is a filter upon everything. So it's where the same filters could be applied to the work that I do. It's a different category sometimes if you found me organically on your own. And, let's look at the training example. I do trainings here. I do trainings online. I do them around the world. If you're coming in and you just found me online and it's the first entry point and just the dates are convenient, the price seems right, and the location is good, versus Tracy, and that Tracy's business is where it is right now because what Tracy learned from me. And she's your friend. And I'm laughing at this example because 2 years ago, I taught a class in Vegas and there were 5 people in the class named Tracy. The joke was, if you don't know her name, just call her Tracy. There were also 4 Michaels, so the odds were good. And I'm actually generally referring to 4 of the same people named Tracy here. If you know Tracy and here's what Tracy did as a result from Jason's training, you're going into that, you're going to be listening more intently. You're going to produce a different experience from the same information. So here's where I take it instead. If this is going to be a factor no matter what, there's a principle that I've been playing with. I don't know if I like this terminology, but it's been working for me for 2 years, is that we can go placebo on techniques that actually work. And what I mean by that is there's a movement in personal health, whether it's, the fitness world has this all over, and in hypnosis, we've been talking this dialogue for years, that of evidence-based techniques. So not just because I like using this technique and it's fun to do. No, instead, well, here's all the scores of research around mindfulness-based meditation. And let's now model that work and bring that into our hypnotic process, evidence-based foundation. But at the same time, if there's things that I can do to frame the process even better. So again, taking a technique that actually works, so starting with something that's already been tested and proven, and now putting the appropriate filters on top of it to make it even more effective. So it's where some people would run from that word in a negative way, really embrace that this is a part of everything. You like your car and you're going to find wonderful features about your car. You buy something, you're going to keep qualifying for yourself how much you like it. Before we jumped on here, I was talking about, slightly high tech, microphones here, wireless earbud here. And the days that these Apple AirPods work, I'm a raving fan. And the days that I have to keep syncing it over and over and over and over and over and it's not connecting, the device could work later that day, but I'm still kind of frustrated with it. So if it's going to be a filter, what are the things we can do to the framing around something to build it up even more effective? It's where I give a simple example of this. I worked a ton with people for Stop Smoking over the years. And there's a period of time where I was doing that in a multiple meeting format. And all I did, this was not a fabricated statement. This was just that moment of tracking, here's what's happening. And I wonder if I say that to people ahead of the process, will that be more helpful to them? And it wasn't in terms of increasing my efficacy. It was just one of those, just so you know, this is something to be aware of type statements. So in that Stop Smoking category, I used to say to people, now, just so you know, we meet over a series of 3 appointments. And the overwhelming majority of people stop as early as that first appointment. They physically stop. There may be some mental cleanup we do in the subsequent appointments. Now, some people, a smaller group, cut back dramatically, now, which is still exceptionally good. Then we knock out the rest of the behavior in the remaining appointments. So again, the majority stop today and we clean up anything else in the next appointments, though a few may just cut back dramatically, which is still good. And then we just take care of the rest from there. So I just give you that as a framework ahead of time. As soon as I started highlighting the result that was already the case, this group widened from the mental expectancy that these are the 2 categories, which indirectly, yes, there's sometimes that person that, let's just call it out in a friendly way, something happens from meeting 1 to something 2, and they maybe stop for a bit and then they backslide. I've got different ways of working with that now. But again, just by framing, here's what the typical results were. Which the disclaimer to that is I was only saying that because that was the result. So it's where sometimes we can analyze what results are we getting with people, what findings are people having, and how do we pre-frame that in such a way that we are now stacking that result to be a much more favorable outcome. The same as imagine, I mean, here's a moment years ago, I went through a brief allergy thing, and doctor number one goes, you didn't respond to those other meds. Here's a new one. There's not as much research around this one, and your insurance is not going to cover it. I don't know. Try it out, see how it goes. And I didn't take it. The next doctor I went to, just lost all faith in that one. The next doctor goes, now this is a newer medication, and I should tell you that there's only a little bit of research around this. It just got cleared recently. However, you didn't respond to this medication or that one. This is made by the company that produces both of those. They removed this feature of that medication and they brought in this feature of that one. And make sure you take it the whole way through, because it has to be in your system for like 7 days to start to notice some of the benefits from that. And once you've done that for 3 weeks, then let's just connect by phone and go from there. I took the medication exactly as prescribed. And whether this is a moment of brilliance or a moment of, let's call it stupidity on my side, only later on realizing it was the same medication. One had built the entire mental expectancy as to why this one was going to be a fit for me. And the other one didn't. And to be fair, I didn't take it the first time through. So again, if it's going to be a factor of all that we do, let's harness it. Let's put it to use in a way that now benefits that individual.
I think that even, we approach a lot of this stuff from like spirituality and some of the, woo-woo stuff. Maybe that even works with like, let me put these crystals, let me set my glass of water on top of this crystal where it's going to change the way, the whole structure of the molecules of the water. It's going to affect me differently when I change it, when I drink it. I don't know if it does that or not. Maybe it does, who knows? But the person believing that they're drinking this charged water, when they drink it, it's gonna taste different. It's gonna feel different to them. Maybe the same thing whenever, in the church as well, where you say the blessing over your meal and you receive it with thanksgiving or something, if there's any impurities in it, to kind of bless it and make it good and receive it. So in your mind, the relationship to that object, to that water, changes. It I guess it's debatable if it really changes it by that using that crystal. I don't know, but that's the placebo, because you believe that it works when you drink it. You live your life like, hey, I just drank this charged water and I'm feeling great, even if it's the same water, right? Is that kind of how the placebo works?
Here's a thought on that. This has some applications for business as well as, let's put it under the category of ethical influence. There's a technique that if I'm working with that executive for public speaking issues, on one side of things, let's take down the problem. On the other side, let's also build up the confidence. And if you had a few strategies to become more effective at speaking is a skill. So if we take down the fear, but also now boost your confidence, because now you've got some strategies and techniques. I mean, I'd give it a simple example that I'm sometimes, let's call it as modeling or borrowing confidence, which would be that I do a ton of video work in terms of my business. And of all random sources to come from, I believe, Scottish comedian Craig Ferguson, who used to have the Late Show before James Corden.
With the skeleton,
there was
right?
There was a style of how he would do the opening monologue that was different from all the other shows. Dating back to Johnny Carson, Jay Leno, nowadays Jimmy Fallon, Stephen Colbert, they're playing to the audience. Mm-hmm. And Craig Ferguson, the times that I watched him, was the first one I saw that the camera was up at an angle and he was speaking directly to that camera. With the camera at an angle kind of tilted down, he can move back, he can move forward and still stay in a level plane. And the audience was secondary. He was talking to the audience at home. And I went, and maybe this is a benefit of being shorter. Otherwise, the camera was aimed up. It's like, that's a cool angle. And just that kind of talking to the camera as if it's one person who I'm just having a conversation with. Yeah. So I was borrowing and modeling that confidence from that to look as well at, what's the other one? If I'm doing some sort of sales presentation, to look at how Steve Jobs would make that transition from here's the product to now here's why you need it, which was typically triggered by, but one more thing. They're on the phone and suddenly it's video chat and it's the Jetsons time all over. Mm-hmm. And he's showing the computer and, one more thing. He's browsing the web. He picks it up. They didn't invent wireless internet, but they were the ones who got to premiere it. Yeah. So that excitement that he had, that was a genuine excitement to share this cool new gadget that you all get to have in your home now. I bring that up here because this mindset of expectation, this mindset of other things coming in. So there's a technique that we call anchoring. And anchoring is when you connect a sensory experience to another sensory experience. And this is something we do on our own all the time. You hear a song on the radio and the song triggers some sort of memory. You walk into a room and you smell something. It's going to trigger some other awareness of something. So there's a concept called spatial anchoring. And the premise of that would be that if I was on a platform, and let's say I was trying to do a sales presentation, and I'm going to move around here for those just listening to this, I'll narrate it as well. If I stood on the right side of the platform as I talked about the problems this company has been facing, and then I moved to the left side of the platform, and I'm now talking about the solutions they can put in motion. And then perhaps, and there's giant air quotations as I talk about this, and you'll see why in a moment, if I now move to the right side, and I now talk about from the problem place, the other options, the competition that's out there, other vendors you could work with. But now I move back to the solution area and introduce my product. The question is, as if I've now electrically charged one area of the platform with negativity and one area with positivity. The question is, by doing that, if I now just simply deliver my sales message from this positive space, will that get the result? And the best answer you can give to that is maybe. However, what also is going on inside of that dialogue? Think about the fact that many people on stage would pace back and forth because they don't know what else to do. I flash to the race car movie with Will Ferrell, Talladega Nights. The opening scene, he's being interviewed on camera, and the character is not knowing where to put his arms. He goes, I don't know where to put my hands. Yeah. Just put them by your sides. Like this, and just he doesn't know how to be natural on camera. That's the joke of it. People are pacing on stage because they're not comfortable just grounding and just delivering the message. So perhaps by having a technique that's now dictating when I move, it's now indirectly, am I hypnotizing the audience to buy into my message, or am I hypnotizing myself to believe I'm being more influential? And again, the answer is, well, a little bit of both. So it's where there's a lot of moving pieces to anything that's out there. It's where, I mean, my sort of belief system is that it's my job to be the chameleon. It's my job to follow the belief system of the person that I'm working with, to follow what their models of faith are, to follow what their models of thinking are. It's where, I mean, I had one day, a quick story of this. I had one day years ago that was the perfect illustration, that the first person is quitting smoking because, as she wrote on her forms, my body is God's temple, and if I don't stop smoking, I'm not going to be welcomed into heaven. Someone else later the day telling me if I bring up religion once, he's walking out of there. Yeah. You know, trying to quit drinking, and I went to an AA meeting, and that's all they tried to cram down my throat. Yeah. Which, side note, if you find someone who likes their Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, they won't tell you which one it is, because it's anonymous. If they've been to one that they didn't like, they will tell you right away which one it was. Same way, sadly, there's more negative hotel and restaurant reviews online than there are positive ones. But because I had heard a tip that someone goes, this is a group that's a little bit more, let's say, non-religious in their message, which is what that organization really is anyway. He found this group, and he took he delayed one of his appointments. He took a vacation. They were going on a ski trip together. He goes, hey, I got to take a vacation away from my problems. And because he found that support system, you know, that's, I think, a big part of his success. Yeah. So it's looking at it again as to what's there. And I think in some way we're all having the same dialogue. We're just labeling it in different ways.
Man, and I got so many questions off of all this stuff, man. But that really, you know, I've seen that in the church realm, right, of coming out of the Christian church, you know, and there would be times when it was time for election, and they would let the mayors come in, or they would let so-and-so over this organization come in and speak, and their dialogue would change to be more religious and God-fearing, and even they wouldn't even know Christianese, if you will, maybe even looking at Donald Trump playing to the right. He was on the left, now he's playing to the right, and he's like new to the Christianese, and he doesn't even know, you know, the Bible or whatever. And it's just so interesting to see, but how effective it was. He's one of us. And really, I don't think he is, but he, you know what I'm saying? He's That's one right. of us. He's one of us. And everybody embracing him because of the terminology. You go to this side, say what they want. I mean, we can look at Hillary the same way. She's for this, she's against that. And then cross tying the words depending playing to the crowd, preaching to the choir to immediately feel like to kind of win the hearts of the crowd, whoever it is. You have to change the terminology, right?
There's a game that pops up if you track anything, either whether it's hypnosis or more the conversational side of it, neurolinguistic programming.
Yeah.
In any election cycle, there's always the game of this politician's using that technique, this one's using that technique. All of this is based off of effective communication. And it's where, were they doing hypnosis? Well, you can look at any effective communication and say there was something hypnotic in terms of the language patterns, in terms of when I use the word influence, that's a playful use of the word, because here's a guy who came into the office years ago and he goes, "You're just going to persuade me." And I go, "Yeah, I'm going to persuade you to feel confident in the situations you've already decided you want to feel confident, but you don't yet."
Yeah. Make
sense? He goes, "Oh yeah, that does make sense." So it's where we can look at any of these things and say, here's traces of it. Here's elements of it. I tend to be, then again, when I bring in faith to it, it's where I have to often remind even myself, oh yeah, that's right. I grew up in a family where half of them were Southern Baptist and the other half of them were Jews from Russia and Poland. So that's an interesting mix. It's easier to follow yours at times as well. My personal thing is I come back to intent. What is that thing that you want to make happen? What are those steps that you're going to set in motion? If we want to bring law of attraction into it, just look at the last 5 letters of the word attraction. It's action. So what are you going to do to set that in motion? What steps are you going to take to create that result that you've been thinking about, you've been talking about, and now you're the one who's going to set it in motion?
Let me go kind of dark here a little bit.
Yeah.
You were talking about, being hypnotized and people do it knowingly and unknowingly. We're getting ourselves in a zone, shaping our beliefs, whether it's faith that's been handed down from our family. You're supposed to believe this, and repetition reduces resistance. And I'm in fact hypnotizing you through conversation, right? We can hypnotize ourselves by speaking things over and over, hearing things over and over, whatever the case is. Which
again is a place where we can draw a line in terms of things that are hypnotic in nature versus the formal process of hypnosis.
The media. You know what I'm saying? Propaganda. Smoking was a big one. Like, who has the best cigarettes? Now, I mean, you're helping people quit smoking now when propaganda was used by the doctor. Doctors choose Marlboro or whatever. Back in the day, the doctor would would advertise the healthiest cigarettes. You know what I'm saying? So even if it's used in a negative way, so there's all of this, maybe someone mentioned, is it similar to MK Ultra? We'll just get into programming of literally television programming by the things that we're watching, the things that we're entertaining, being programmed by without even knowing it, right? So that's happening too, right? We're being programmed through the things we're watching without knowing that, hey, we're going into a hypnotic trance. Maybe you're falling asleep and the television's on, and that stuff's getting placed in your subconscious or whatever. How does that work? Because I wanted to kind of touch on that, but this is kind of tying 2 questions together. How does that work from us just talking about it? And I believe in being intentional with conversation. Like you said, encouraging people. Yeah, you can do it. I can see you doing that. You'd be a great public speaker. Yeah. And just conversation versus going into whether it's trance state through, hypnotherapy, hypnosis or whatever, and implanting those thoughts there. Like, how does all of that kind of come into play?
Which, for some odd reason, I have to answer you first by telling a story that involves the singer Katy Perry, which is that this is many years ago when I was in the theater career at the time. A group of us got together one night. It was in Baltimore. And the whole thing was that here's a bar that was doing karaoke. Let's all go. And some of them were actors and singers. So it was the whole gag of they're going to get up and be really good at this. But then the fun of it became, let's also now play karaoke Russian roulette, which is we don't get to pick our own songs. I get to pick the song for you, and you don't know what it is until you're up there. And there's this one guy, big, muscular, leading man style guy that he gets I Kissed a Girl by Katy Perry. And as he put it, I was angry that I had to do the song, and I was even more angry that I knew all the words.
Yeah.
So I bring that up because, again, I'm going to look towards things as being, what's the solution? How can we unpack this and use it to our advantage? So it's the fact that there are advertising campaigns that are locked in your brain and they put them there. Why? Because again, the word you used a little while ago, repetition. So we hear it over and over and over. So the makeup commercial comes on. Maybe she's born with it. You now know immediately which company that is. You hear, I'm living it. And immediately you connect to the food from the restaurant, even though you might not even shop there. You see that my headphones are white. And you immediately know because they looked around years ago and went, everyone else's headphones are black, let's make ours white. Across the room, I knew you were in my little made-up community.
Yeah.
So if this is a thing that's happening, let's model that for ourselves.
Exactly.
And forgive my horrible singing, so no one told you life was going to be this way. Yeah. So there are things that are there in your mind because, again, through repetition, we've heard them over and over. And I always come back to that karaoke moment. He goes, I was angry I had to do the song, and even more angry that I knew all the words.
Yeah.
So because it had been playing nonstop that previous summer, it was the big hit song at the time, and everyone knew it at the time. And he didn't know he knew all the words.
Yeah.
So it's where, as I'm speaking at times, is one of these strategies of calling it just that conscious programming. What's that message that you want to be using? And it's where we can get high tech with this. We can get low tech with this. The wonders of having our little devices in our pockets nowadays. Turn on that voice recorder memo. And it's taking that affirmation to a next level, or that positive hypnotic statement, whatever it is. And here's the simplest formula for a hypnotic suggestion. It's an action followed by a result. So if I simply tried to affirm the statement, I've saved enough money for my college education for my kids. If this was a few years ago, to be saying that in the affirmative, that would have been a lie because we hadn't yet opened the account for our son. Had it for our daughter, but he had just been born. So to look yourself in the mirror and smile and say, I've saved enough money for my children's college education, I would have been lying to myself. I would have been putting up a wall to that. But let's put an action to that. As I regularly set aside money in an automated way, I'm enjoying the feeling of growing my children's college education. And to take a phrase such as that, maybe tighten it up a little bit, hop onto the voice recorder memo on your phone, record yourself, say it a few times over, and think about the amount of time we spend in our life where we're just taking care of things around the house. We're driving somewhere quick, and rather than have the next pop song stuck in your head, begin to fill the mind with that positive message instead. Yeah. So we can sit here and say, how dare those people do those things?
Without us knowing it.
We can look at that, we do know it. We can also look at it and go, how do I use this to my advantage? How do I use that to better myself? How do I use that to connect with people in a much deeper level? So it's, again, I'm always going to be looking for that more positive twist on something to go, let me now use this skill, because if this is the nature of how we work, let's say it politely, they would not be doing those things if they didn't know that it worked. Yeah. So it's where you see Eat Fresh, you know what restaurant that is. They pack it down in such a small little positioning statement that it just locks into your brain. Let's do that with those changes we want to create in our lives. Again, use these abilities for your own good.
Yeah, that's the thing, because when it comes to those words, programming, media, logos, and you're like remembering all this stuff that really you don't want to, but you do. You don't know why. You don't know why you eventually you pass by a store and you want to buy that, or that item stands out to you from the colors or the branding or the packaging, and you buy it, and it's like that, impulsive buying. You buy it, you're like, why did I got it. Now that I own it, I don't really want it type deal, right?
Although,
there was
again,
something that
use it to your advantage. Exactly. So here's when I'm typically speaking, one of my frameworks for presentation is I'm teaching strategies to actually turn goals into actions. Mm-hmm. One of the techniques is self-hypnosis. I demo that with people from the group. So in that environment, that's typically a place where, there's a rough outline of my presentation. I've done elements of that for going on about 17, 18 years at this point. So I know the ins and outs of how to do it. Where it becomes a little bit different is that I'm customizing to, if it's a corporate group, it's an organization, I'm customizing to the people in front of me. And back to what you referenced earlier, I did a TEDx talk back in April. And that was the first time, I think, ever since college, that it became, I need to memorize a presentation verbatim. Because it was the whole, you've got anywhere between 10 and 12 minutes for the time chunk you're going to be in. And when I heard that, I went, every word is going to be precise. Every transition is going to be tight. And it became a place where that was like the most scripted thing I had done in years. And how did I do it? I used the same setup that I've got right here. I recorded myself saying the presentation, and that was the only thing I listened to on my phone for like 2 months. I'm driving to the office. I'm listening to that. My wife described it at one point. We were at our kids' are now 5 and 7. This was earlier this year. I was walking around at their soccer games. The perfect timing. Our daughter's soccer game was here. Son's game was over there. And I'm the one kind of walking around muttering to myself, repeating the same words over and over. So without the game of sitting there and trying to, by rote, repeat the words over and over, hoping they stick, trusting that unconscious ability that, I'm going to be hearing it, I'm going to be absorbing it, and I'm going to know it in and out. Also, back to the theater world. Yep. Actors don't learn lines anymore by sitting down and just repeating them over and over. They attach meaning to the words. They sit around tables in the rehearsal and do what's called table work. And once the meaning is there, the words are understood. So later in the rehearsals, maybe here's an actor who keeps forgetting a specific line. At that point, the books are out of their hands. They could be prompted by the management. They say line, the assistant yells out the line. But if the actor is consistently forgetting the same line, it's not that they weren't doing their homework. So often it was that they didn't know what the character was trying to say in that moment. And as soon as the meaning was there, as soon as the meaning was understood, then the memorization was taken care of. So again, if we're going to be influenced by these things around us, let's start to, if it's just let's call it as a simple, that's a mechanism of the mind. Let's now use that towards our own strength.
Yep. Branding, logos, SEO, all of that kind of stuff kind of plays into that as well.
Indirectly on the hypnosis training side of things, the story behind this was the book I've got coming out is Work Smart Business, but the training side of hypnosis is Work Smart Hypnosis. There's a podcast for that project too. And it was because I shot a project back in 2012. And the game was I was shooting 3 days of video, and I didn't know what order the video was going to be released. It was supposed to be a linear course, but I was kind of shooting out of order. Mm-hmm. So the thought was, I'm just going to wear the same thing every day. That way we can, edit it together. Blue shirt, purple tie. Yeah. And my website designer then pulled the color of purple from my tie, made that the color scheme of the website. And now I kind of own the color purple in the hypnotic profession. Someone nicknamed it 50 Shades of Purple, where people were at another convention years ago and they had a purple tablecloth and they actually got asked, is Jason okay with that? Which was entirely by accident that I claimed it as my own. I'm not quite using that in other projects nowadays. But again, it's that anchoring thing we talked about earlier. We're constantly drawing associations. We're constantly creating connections. And rather than consider ourselves the victim of that circumstance, let's go instead, here is an ability that people have. Let me now use this to better myself.
Yeah. Using it for your advantage, man. And, some people are even intentional about that, like the different emotions that a certain color, I'm using a lot of purple as well, different emotions, and they make you feel a certain type of way. Some people I've heard speakers always use a blue shirt, like they wear a blue shirt every time because people associate it with something, and then the spiritual meaning of the color or whatever the case is, but they have those reasons that they do it. Just like if you was to use maybe orange and black, everybody would immediately think Halloween, or red and green. They think Christmas or whatever the case. So we associate stuff even unknowingly. So you wouldn't want to theme your website, everything the same color, whatever like that. So that's interesting. Let me ask you about this though. And this may be a weird question, but it's a question. Have you ever had anybody approach you for a session something that was just off limits or whatever? It was just weird, negative. It may be detrimental to them. If I was to give an example, how can I be a better drug dealer, or how can I do something that you're like, nope, that's off limits. I don't do that. How can I be a womanizer? I don't know what it is, but have there been anybody come to you and you're just like, no, I'm not the person you're looking for? Have you ever dealt with that?
This is right. It's weird in a training environment. Sometimes there'd be the question of, what about this? What about that? And I always tell them ahead of time, it's like, well, I have to be able to play the game that I'm allowed to say. I've actually never had that specific request, though. If I did, here's what I would do. There's some traces of this over the years. The easiest example you can think of, let's use a simple one, is maybe male or female, they're calling up for weight loss and then come to find out they're rail thin and clearly there's something else going on. I'm surprised. I've never had that specific phone call, but if that was the case, I live by the safety statement that just because you can doesn't mean you should. So often, even as, you mentioned some of the credentials ahead of time of getting an award of Hypnotist of the Year. I've trained thousands of people around the world, and I don't work with everyone who contacts me. There are moments where even I'm very comfortable saying, here's a simple example of this gentleman actually moved in the last couple of years. So I'm looking for a new resource. Someone would call up for something very medically related, and here are the symptoms I'm trying to deal with. So they're not expecting that I'm going to cure the condition. No. Yet I'm nauseous from this. I'm not sleeping well. It's stressing me out. And those are the bullet points we can go after. Yet I'd be very open over the years to say that, you're calling about something very medically related, which I'm going to have to look up. And here's another person in my local area that he is a retired medical doctor that is now retired from medicine, but now doing this work full time. I think you should call him, tell him I said hi. Yeah. Simple as, there was a call yesterday that as much as I work with people around the world, it's not just a one-to-one in the room. I work with people through video conferencing. And here's a person who calls up and I'm listening and I'm realizing, oh, wait, she's in New Jersey. And I have to go, how far are you away from this city? Mm-hmm. And she goes, that's 3 minutes down the road from it. And I go, oh, okay, yeah, just here's Brian's number. Brian's a good friend. He does great work. So there's that opportunity that, there's more opportunities around. The one category that I'd say has called in, and it's just me playing the ultimate just because you can doesn't mean you should. I need to pass a lie detector test, and I'm going to be very cautious around that because some of them have very outwardly said why they have to pass it. And that's every reason why, oh, no, you're not coming to my office. So again, it's to look at from the perspective. I think the bigger picture statement is that in any business, you don't have to work with everybody. You are allowed to pick those things that those are your specialties. And there have been moments where, let's call this one out, someone has called on behalf of a family member who is doing something that they don't approve. Mm-hmm. And until it's that person's intention to change, then it's not the appropriate thing to do. Until it's that person's actual desire to create that change. There's all sorts of possibilities inside of just that general statement. But it's where just because you can doesn't mean you should. I think it's a great phrase to live by. And it's where there's an odd story inside of this one. In the end of the story first, she eventually called back and eventually her story changed and we worked together and she was successful. Yet it's this woman who called up and she goes, I want to see if you can make me stop smoking. I don't have any interest in quitting. I want to see how good you are. Yeah. To which I go, oh, this is going to be easy. I'm not going to try because this is a collaborative process. And really it's more so that I'm showing you how you can strengthen this part of your mind to make that decision in a new direction. Oh, you must be a horrible hypnotist then. Well, if that's your criteria, I guess I am. Oh. And she is now off complaining to a bunch of her friends about this fill-in-the-blank hole hypnotist who wouldn't take her money. Yeah. And they're all now calling me and going, hey, are you the guy that they say the name talk to? I go, well, everything here is confidential. Yeah, we know you are. Yeah, I'm ready to quit. Can I come in? So she started it from a challenge position, which mind read that for what you will as to what may have been going on there and what her intention of that was. But eventually her complaining about this person who wouldn't even take her money out of the ethics of it, just, you're not going to be successful. I don't want you here. She was then seeing the friends who were then contacting me and they were successful. And she goes, okay, yeah, I'm ready. Let's do this. And has since been successful. So it's about recognizing where someone is in their journey. Though, again, if it's something that is illegal, immoral, I've openly said this to people over the years to go, I am firmly confident in my skills and your skills and the effectiveness of this work. Though I had a person a while ago that was, and I can do this with smoking. I'm okay with this with even drinking that, well, I do this, but I don't want to stop. Years ago, here's a person, he goes, I smoke 3 packs a day. I want to go down to 3 cigarettes a day. I know that's not perfect, but that's definitely going to be better for me. It's like, sure, come on in. I see a ton of people who have come in because they want to cut back. They want to have control over the drinking rather than completely stop it. And by all means, let's do this. But here's the one who goes, I'm using cocaine very frequently. I just want to use it at parties. I'm going, I'm not going to be a part of this.
Yeah.
And I'd highly recommend chat with your doctor about this. They may have some resources for you.
Yeah.
Here's a psychologist or two in the area that I think would be a good fit. They work with issues with drugs. But not to bring in my personal judgment on this, but I don't think it's right for me to be a part of, doing it more recreationally. Than
cocaine addiction. Yeah.
Yeah.
Regulating your addiction.
It comes down to, I think, again, the simplest statement in any businesses and any part of life is when in doubt, don't.
Yeah.
And it's where if someone calls me for something that I'm not the fit for, and if I don't have a resource, my language is positive to go, well, unfortunately, that's not something I think is within my expertise, and I don't yet have a resource that I think can help you with that. Though as soon as you find something that does help you, please call me back right away so I've got that as a resource for people in the future. Which, to use some hypnotic language terminology, that's doing what we call future pacing someone out into their outcome, and it's setting the expectation you are going to get through this thing. Unfortunately, I'm not the fit for it, but as soon as you do find someone, share that resource with me. So leave them, the dialogue is always leave them better off than how we found them.
Good stuff. How we looking on time? What you looking like? I got a couple more questions here for you.
Oh, I'm good.
Okay, great. We have a question that just came in from my good friend Andrew, who's in the chat. I'm going to play this and I'm going to read it. Let's see.
How about past life regression, Jason? Do you do it? Do you believe in it and reincarnation like Journey of Souls explains?
Okay, I don't know if you was able to hear that, but he said, and I want to say thank you, Andrew, for the donation. He says, how about past life regression, Jason? Do you do it? Do you believe in it? And reincarnation like the Journey of Souls explains. Reincarnation, they want to journey through the past lives and wonder who they were, what they were. And in my study in this moving forward, I'm a bit of a skeptic, even though I approach a lot of this from the, spiritual aspect. I'm still a skeptic about that a little bit. And what I've recently learned this term, we know about the regressive, the past life regression. But I found out there's this other thing called suggestive thoughts, and kind of like suggesting that you were this, and then let's explore it and suggesting it. What do you feel about past life regression and going in? Do you work with people or actually guide them through that?
Yeah, a couple of things on that. One is that, again, like I mentioned before, it's always going to be my responsibility to work within the belief structure of the person who's there in front of me. And to recognize that, again, whether we put it in a hypnotic dialogue or whether we go back to the dialogue we had a little while ago around marketing and advertising, we take in ideas all the time. As a bit of a parody of this was a real thing that I read. There was someone who was in a nearby state that was posting online, I'm looking to do a research study on people with past lives dating back to the Civil War. This is your experience, call me up. Is he really looking for a, quote, pure study, or is he now directing people to look for that specific experience? Yeah. This is no judgment call around people who do palm reading or psychic readings, yet there is a story. One time I was at an event where this person was doing readings and telling people what they were in a past life. Come to find out, everyone was told the same story.
Yeah.
So it's where the quality of it dates back to the individual doing it. Again, it's not so much my belief system of it. It's more so what is the person who is there with it. Now, the disclaimer I'd always give is that in a classroom environment, sometimes people would be rather cynical about the idea of it, to which I would remind of the people in the world who follow a religion. The overwhelming majority of them follow a religion, a faith that includes past lives as part of the belief system. So it turns out that actually, statistically speaking, of people who follow faith is the majority, not the minority. Yeah. So be aware of the audience. From a business side of things, I'm fascinated by it. I'm curious about it, though, again, we have the right to pick our expertise. So if someone calls me for that, I actually tell them, my passion is personal change. Here's where you are today. Here's where you want to go. Let's bridge that connection. Yeah. So if the goal is just exploration, here's 3 other people in the area who I'd connect you with because they're really good at that, and that's who I send to for that. Yeah. From a theoretical perspective, 2 possible explanations here. Option number 1, even a scientific mind such as Einstein would say that energy is never created nor destroyed. So perhaps we're all the same web of energy, and as one body, one soul dies, it now passes on to another. Maybe. Though at the same time, we have the ability to, there's a whole thing that we understand now in the mind called memory reconsolidation, where the anecdote that comes out of this is the best way to remember something is to forget it. That the more we tell the story, the more we start to confabulate and add details to something.
Yeah.
That we, in terms of the mind, and this is not a good thing or a bad thing, it's just a thing that we do, we generalize, we distort, we delete. So those of you watching the stream of this may remember the kind of funky looking Salvador Dali clock in the background, but you might not remember the fake plant from IKEA in the corner, because that wasn't a necessary part of the conversation until I brought it up. We would just delete that thing out. But we also distort information and we delete it. There was a study at one point of where were you when the spaceship Challenger exploded? And they asked the people for their story. 10 years later, they went back and asked the story again. And for most of the people, the story's changed. And they didn't believe it until they were played back their original recording. So perhaps also within hypnosis, we have the ability to do what we call positive hallucination, to experience even a feeling that isn't there. Which is not a creepy thing. Let's look at it just from hypnotic pain relief. If you're feeling this negative sensation, let me now suggest a positive feeling to override that signal in a much more pleasing way. And of course, that's a category where I'm, connecting with the doctor to make sure all is good with alleviating that discomfort. So if we have the ability to positively hallucinate something, could that also be an explanation as to what's happening when the person is going into, let's use the word, a perceived past experience? Which one is it? And kind of the excitement is we can't prove either one. So it's where we kind of step back and go, it's where I'd always be cautious around stating something as absolute fact.
Yeah.
So a friend of mine has a master's in neuroscience, and he was talking about if you've ever seen the documentary, What the Bleep Do We Know? He was talking about, there's a scene in there where someone is saying every cell has a consciousness.
Yeah.
Which he's going, well, to be safer, you should be saying research now suggests it's as if every cell perhaps has a consciousness. And you're just softening the language, because what happens 20 years later when some new discovery is made, and now every bit of this person's work is now discounted because, well, that part's not true.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on now.
I put it to the individual's belief systems as to what fits within the parameters of who they are. But again, from the business side of things, my specialty is personal change. My specialty is working with people even in business who are holding themselves back from their own startup or their scale-up stories and going in that direction. Now, do those things sometimes pop up as part of the experience? And it's not my judgment as to whether it's real or whether it's imagined. It's instead that here is what that person is finding as part of their organic experience, needed to be a catalyst to help them produce that change.
The weird thing is, it's like people who go and have those regressions and they believe it. Sometimes it's suggested, and this person told them that they were a cat being from the planet Sirius in one lifetime or whatever. And then people actually believe it, and they move forward and they build their bios in business. I'm a healer and I'm from the planet Sirius, and like they really believe it. And if it's true, like I said, we don't know to call BS or whatever. They believe it. They had that encounter, whether it was real to them. They're moving forward now as if that is the truth, and they've kind of hypnotized themselves to have that experience and add it to them. So for them, whether it's delusion or whatever, they're moving forward as if it really happened. Making choices, introducing themselves by this or whatever. And I get a lot of weird inboxes of this kind of stuff. And I'm not a believer, but I do know the fact that moving forward, if it's real, it doesn't matter, because they own the experience. Whether there's a lot of stuff about DMT and psychedelics and meeting beings in the astral realms and stuff, and if they really exist, or is it your mind creating that experience off of a movie you watched or whatever. It doesn't matter if it was real or not, because you still have experienced that, whether it's in the dream state and you've adopted it like it really happened moving forward. There's some that you can people are creating their own delusions or creating their own reality. It gets a little bit tricky there, doesn't it?
Well, it's where, to kind of, not necessarily set this dialogue aside, but to look at it, it kind of goes back to the dialogue that we had earlier around the suggestion of the world around us. To look at everything, my whole perspective is, let's look at everything as an asset. And how can I use this now in a way that's going to serve me? Whether it's real, whether it's imagined, whether, here's the situation where part of my business story was the worst business advice is what made me an instant success. That people were saying to me, it's going to be slow your first year. People won't come see someone who doesn't have testimonials or referral sources. Maybe you should have started part-time. And I kind of nicknamed this now the power of premise, that realizing that if I believed that was going to be my result.
Yeah.
But if I use that as every reason to do things in a much more directed way and produce a different result, that could be my result as well. So they were all saying it's going to be slow your first year. I refused to buy into that idea. Instead, I believed in my story that if I go out there and I professionally represent what I do in a professional way with passion, that's going to drive people into my office, which it did. So I'd look at everything again back to that statement of look at it as an asset and what are you going to do with that? There's an old line in some hypnotic trainings that, children are always in a state of hypnosis because they're always taking in ideas and they believe in things like they believe in like Easter Bunny and Tooth Fairy and Santa Claus. And I think back to, I can think of when my kids were a few weeks old and very clearly disagreed with me. They had that ability to exercise that critical faculty of the mind. And my son was the one who took the pacifier out of his mouth and threw it across the room, like a few weeks old, and just wouldn't have it. When you hear of other families going, she's 5 and she won't get rid of it. And he's just in a few weeks old, just swatted that thing out of his mouth and didn't want it. I can think back to, I was either 4 or 5 years old, and I won't say which family member it was. It wasn't my parents. But I heard, we were outside and we heard an ambulance drive by. And this family member of mine goes, do you hear that? Someone's having the worst day of their life.
Wow.
Which, how do you know? Which, because we had a family member or a friend, I forget the scenario, that had one, part of my mind was going, what if, like, it's an organ donor situation and now they're being rushed to the hospital to get to this life-saving procedure? What if it's this couple that now the baby's going to arrive today and it's the happiest day of their life? Here's this sound, which from their perspective of negativity, someone's having the worst day of their life. And instead, well, what if it's the opposite? It's going to be slow your first year. What if I use that as every reason to break out and make it work from day one?
Reverse
so again, it's that mindset of going, again, let me look at everything as a jumping off point. I can go that direction.
Yeah.
I can go this one. I had 2 guys who came into the office separately. They didn't overlap with each other, but they were both in their early 60s, both recently retired, both wanted to lose weight. And the first one came in, hey, now that I'm retired, this is going to be easy. I'm going to be able to go to the gym and cook for myself, and this is the perfect time to do this. A few hours go by, here comes the next guy. Now that I'm retired, this is going to be impossible to lose weight. I'm going to want to dine out more. We're going to want to sit around our house more frequently. I don't know how I'm going to do this. And he was successful enough until finally I went, funny story. The first day you came here, I had another client come in. I told the whole story, and that's when it took off. That again, people would often, let's look at a business example. Well, I can't do those things you do though, because I got kids. It's like, yeah, so do I. And I'm doing these things because I have kids. Because now I get to live a lifestyle where I'm at the dinner table with them every night. My son's got a Cub Scout meeting tonight. There's events this weekend, and I'm able to be there because I've now designed my life. I'm at the gym working out in the morning before everyone's awake because now I get to hopefully increase that longevity and that ability to actually be there with them. So harness whatever scenario is there, use it as your own because to move life in the direction you want.
It's good stuff. Couple more questions here. Speaking about energy, the universe, we're all connected or whatever. I kind of believe that, right? There's a question here from Chris Garner, and he says, is empathy and intuition a part of helping people with hypnosis? Or is it more a part of just a calculated approach? Because you find out what works. Okay, this is working, and I've dealt with enough people who deal with smoking. I know this works. So you don't need a lot of intuition and empathy moving in that area. Does it come into play for you at all? Maybe the spiritual side of being led and let's just try this and see if it works type deal?
Well, look at what's the equation that luck often comes down to preparation and coincidence, I think it's the phrase, something of that nature. That if I could sit there and say, oh, I'm trusting my intuition, I'm trusting whatever energy is coming towards me. And some people would come from that perspective. But at the same time, let's look at the fact that I've been doing this stuff now it was a hobby from like 2001 to around 2006. It was just an interest in that time. It was a hobby, part-time career after that, and officially going full-time around 2007, 2008. And here's the Malcolm Gladwell reference to 10,000 hours. Here's the more than 50,000 hours of time. Here's the number of people. Here's the metaphors of, you're now reminding me of this person who came in, and here's something that I found was really helpful with that person. So I could say it's intuition and cast it off to some other thing around me that's making it happen. Though I think sometimes take the hand and you want to be appropriately to go, well, yeah, but I knew to say that because I got called out in a funny way a couple of years back, that one of our major conventions, someone goes, you're our only speaker who pays to go to other people's classes.
Wow.
Some people, they go, oh, I'm just here to learn. No, you're actually paying and attending the courses. When I'm in the car, I call it mobile university. I'm listening to workshops. I'm listening to information. And it's where, yes, it's going somewhere in the mind and the energy of everything. Yet it also comes back to really putting in the work. There was a person who did an initial edit of my book, and the gag was, one of these business strategies you talk about seems a little complicated. Maybe you should present a few more things that kind of fit in the kind of get rich quick scheme side of things. And I had to go, the first word of the book's title is the word work. So sometimes, yes, you do have to put in the effort, and to look at, again, where we can draw inspiration from other sources. This is what drew me, on a personal side, to strength training. I was a runner before that. And with running, there's a finish line. And I found that was not a motivator for me. And with strength training, there wasn't a finish line. It was that every week, can I do that a little bit better? Could I do it with better form? Can I do it now with better strength? Can I put more weight on the bar? There was that continued growth of something, which it's not that I'm now willing myself to get stronger. No, I've put in the hours necessary to make that thing happen. And eventually now establishing a skill. I walk up to the barbell for that specific weightlifting move. I know where to put my hands. Why? Because I've put in the effort to figure it out. I know to arch the shoulders back and bring the elbows down because that's how I prevent that injury that I had 4 years ago. So to look at it, that it's a lot of different things coming together, but preparation meeting up with that unique opportunity often is what created that luck. You look at some of these reality competition talent shows, and you Google some of these people, and it's not that it's been fabricated, but they're producers. They're looking for people who are talented, so they get the ratings. So you watch the show, and you find so often that here's this person who it took them 30 years to become an overnight success. They didn't just wake up and get in line and audition for America's Got Talent. No, they've been on stage doing that comedy act for 30 years. They've been working all the dingy clubs and, really grinding away at festivals on stage performing. And now they got that opportunity to now do it to a much bigger audience. So it's where passion is one thing, yet putting in the work to actually get good at it. It's where the Steve Martin answer to how do you become a success just becomes so good they can't ignore you.
Yeah.
That takes the preparation. That takes the time to set it in motion.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Sticking with it. Two questions in one, I guess. I'm going to try to tie these questions together. What actually happens during a hypnosis session, like as far as planning ideas, healing, there's therapy, attaboy, you can do it. I'm bringing you into the trance state so that you get it. I want you to touch on that. But then again, another question I have to kind of maybe tie them together. Have you seen the movie Get Out? And the sunken place and the trance and because you watching the movie, then it just gets real. Whenever that, I'm sure it was awesome for you.
But then it doesn't get real at the end.
Yeah, right. It gets real crazy. But so, what happens in the trance state, or in the affirmations of hearing? What I'm saying, the repetition, retraining the mind, and what about even going into a relaxed state and stuff like that? What's happening in the mind?
Yeah, and a couple of things there. Let's redefine trance in a much more direct way. Trance can be simply defined as that moment where internal focus carries more meaning than external reality. So here's the person. Internal story means more than the external story, the external surroundings. Simple example, here's my guy last week, fear of flying. And he knows, statistically speaking, he's safer up in the airplane than he is driving to the airport. He knows that. And yet the internal story, the internal trance is, I'm terrified we're all going to die. Even though in spite of that feeling, you could sit there and logic it out with him. Yeah, I know I'm fine. Yeah, I know. He brought this up himself. Turbulence is the feeling of the plane responding appropriately to the environment. Turbulence is a sign the plane is working. You're all right. Just keep your seatbelt on. So that's how we can look at that word trance in a much more accessible format to it. What I would say is that, to recognize that if we want to talk hypnosis, if we want to talk meditation, these are category words. And inside of those categories, there's all different styles of work. There's mindfulness meditation. There's transcendental meditation. Inside of hypnosis, there's different models of hypnotic work. The way that I tend to look at it is, what are those replicating patterns, and how do we interrupt those? And how do we establish a better one? Also, what is that desired emotional state? So you used the R word. And hypnosis is not necessarily relaxation. Relaxation is not necessarily hypnosis. Here's my person here's a guy I had recently. Actually, here's a cool example of one day, just two people, same goal, different environments. One of them is a government contractor, and he needs to stand up in his government contractor position and just simply give the updates as to the engineering work that they've been doing. Here's how we're matching our budgets right now, and here's what we're projecting for the year ahead. And I had to ask, how dynamic does this presentation have to be? He goes, not at all. I'm just getting up there. I'm reading bullet points off of a document that they're also looking at as well. They're not even looking at me, and yet I'm still nervous up there. Same day, here's another person with public speaking issues. He is a political activist. He's out there raising funds for some amazing cause, and he's got to get out there and really excite these people to donate their money, donate their time, and it's got to be an amazingly dynamic presentation. So look at the emotional baseline of both of these experiences. And for one, it kind of makes sense, a more relaxation. You can be there in your mind, noticing just how calm you feel. And for the other one, imagination, emotion is the language of the mind. For the other one, I've got to be going to that excited place with him and just be there, just feel that energy pumping throughout you, just feel that excitement flowing throughout you. And we're running that new pattern instead. Though it's where, again, the metaphor I live by is, here's the handy person who's got the van of all the tools. And here's all the various tactics that we've got. And it's a matter of, how do I put them together in the right order to fit that person? Or if it's a product, looking at it in terms of, how do I put the pieces together into a system that now you can put it together yourself in a way that you can now do this work on your own? I mean, simple correlation there. Look at what P90X did with the exercise world. Do you want to get stronger? Watch the videos in this order. Do you want to lose weight? Watch the videos in that order. Do you want to build muscle? Watch the videos in this order. Make sure you read the nutrition book. So they're giving you that roadmap to do it yourself. So it's to say, it's not that cookie cutter approach. It's that instead, how do you make it your own? How do you get into that? We use the word suggestibility in older textbooks in the hypnotic profession. Let's begin to rebrand that instead as receptivity, more of an accelerated learning mindset. How do we now open the mind to take on these new belief systems? And so often it's feeding those original belief systems back in such a way that they don't fit anymore.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Mentalism. Someone mentioned David Blaine. They said this guy would be a good, kind of David Blaine type character, right? There's a form of magic. We're talking about stage magic early on, right? These different tricks that you can do, get people to believe you. And there's some, you talked about mirroring people, in the room with them to There's a suggestibility there. There's some science about touching people. There's, if you're in a nightclub or whatever, you break that barrier, touch them on the shoulder, touch them on the arm. You talked about changing your breathing pattern to match the person. All of this really interesting stuff. How does it work? Are you interested in that at all? The whole mentalist or stage magic or magician David Blaine type stuff?
Funny that you bring that up, because that was part of the story of getting into hypnosis. I had a hobby of doing magic as a teenager. And part of the journey getting out of that hobby was that, okay, but if I could really do this magic trick, why am I carrying around a pack of cards?
Yeah.
The ultimate magic trick would be, you say you're hungry, I go, boom, and there's a sandwich in my hands. That's magic. As opposed to, and now I've shuffled the pack of cards, and now we can't find your card, and now it's on top.
Mm-hmm.
That's I don't want to diminish that in any way. I've got many friends still in those communities, but it was this quest to go, how do I make it more pure? Okay, well, if I'm doing magic with coins, there's a whole section of coin magic. Mm-hmm. If I could really make money appear at my fingertips and move magically from this hand over to that hand, why would I have to carry around Morgan silver dollars that date back to the 1890s? Again, if I could really do that, we'd be in line for a store. I'd realize, oh, I forgot my wallet. $50 bill, pay the tab. So that I then developed the interest in the mentalism side of things, the mind reading magic side of things. Mm-hmm. And not to reveal any trade secrets here, but if I could really read your mind and tell you the name of someone you went to school with in the third grade, why would I need to go through the formula process of having you write it down? I just walk up to you and say, hey, think of your friend in the third grade. And I'd say the name. So it was looking for ways to remove the props, to remove the stuff that was supposed to make it happen. And that's about the time that I saw the hypnosis program. And here he was on stage with 20 people, and that was it. And just through the words, through the suggestions, through the building of the environment, he was doing a type of magic that I'm going, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
Without putting something down, I would just give a small disclaimer and credit to an amazing magician, mentalist. Look this guy up. His name is Alon New, whose line was, there's a field of our work called NLP, neurolinguistic programming. It's more conversational hypnosis. His line was, don't NLP on my leg and tell me it's raining. That sometimes, and just to be aware, sometimes people are using hypnosis or suggestion as the framework as to how they might be doing the trick. Yet meanwhile, behind the scenes, there was some sleight of hand that actually made it happen. So there are some things out there that are being presented as if they were hypnosis and suggestion. Just be aware that there's a category of that out there that really it's another thing that was making it work. Mm-hmm. Without revealing too many trade secrets. But I mentioned that especially to folks like you who have some passing interest in hypnosis to go, but how would you do that? I'm going,
I'm still asking, like, how,
maybe it wasn't camera tricks, but let's call it creative editing.
You're right. Yeah, there's or plants.
Not so much. A lot of the people who do things on TV are actually rather good about keeping the. I've never seen Darren Brown live and in person. He's got some amazing specials now on Netflix too. It's awesome that he's now becoming more of a name.
Okay,
but he's not, other than his more psychological experiment stuff, where he is using actors, but actors around one person who doesn't know the other people are actors. That's a whole other. More psychological influence category.
Well, we're talking about like David Blaine pulling somebody's tooth out their mouth and then blowing it back in. Then you see the same lady.
To which I have to respectfully go, why would you do that? Because that's a skill.
Why would you open your mouth and allow him to do it too? Like that's something else, right? So there's a bunch of that going on. Well, Jason, man, there is a reason that you won Hypnotist of the Year 2017, and everything that you're bringing to the table. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Everyone in the chat has been eating it up. Comment here from Allie Graham Rideout says, I think this guy's the most favorite interview you've done, Truth Seeker. Thank you for finding him and sharing with us. And I've interviewed some extraordinary people, so I really enjoyed this, man. I approach it from the spiritual woo-woo side, but I like the fact that there is like the whole scientific breakdown of how you can approach it from that, and that this is how it works. This is how your suggestibility, this is how repetition reduces resistance, because it's how the mind works, and you're able to retrain someone. If you want to tie the faith into it, whether it's Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, or whatever, like, it's a reason that this stuff works and people believe this stuff. So, man, thank you for coming on. If you want to go ahead and plug some of your links, your website, where people can get in contact with you, man, that would be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's where, again, make it all your own is the intention. Even as I teach, one of my catchphrases is that it's not my intention to turn you into a clone of me.
Yeah.
It's my responsibility instead to give you sometimes the insane level of thinking I've put into what I do. That way you can replicate it and make it your own. So coming up on January 27th, my book, Work Smart Business, is coming out, which, if you're listening to this before the 27th, head over right now to worksmartbusiness.com, because you're going to get access to a couple of chapters of the book for free as a preview. And also the 27th, 8th, and 9th, the book is going out on a free promo. Complete the form over on Work Smart Business. And that's going to give you all the details of exactly how to get that book during the launch period when that's going to be free, worksmartbusiness.com. You can find me directly by going to jasonlinett.com. And let me spell my last name, because people try to add extra letters to it. It's only 6 letters, as I found the easiest way to remember it. Linett. So jasonlinett.com. I'm on every social media platform as Jason Linett. Or if you're looking for more of the hypnosis information, check out WorkSmartHypnosis.com. That's a podcast that actually goes out every Thursday, available on every platform. Interviews, teaching methods, business strategy as well. And I do events all over. And head over to the Work Smart Hypnosis website. There's all sorts of free downloads available there too. But the main thing I'm here sharing these days is Work Smart Business. That's the book, which, again, get a free chapter of that. One is on something we talked about, power of premise. How do you take that current situation, flip that belief structure, and now turn that into your catalyst for success? And then one of the other chapters I'll send out too is all about a very direct method of ethical influence. How do we take information that's there and feed it back in a way that now we can positively create that catalyst for change? Again, if you're listening before the 27th of January, still head over to Work Smart Business. That'll get you the free access. Or after that, still go to the same website. We're going to keep that free preview option open. And then after that, they'll give you the details to grab the book on Amazon. And of course, if you're listening after the free period, anybody in business simply using one of the strategies and getting a result is going to pay back your investment of the book and much more. But this has been awesome. Thanks for having me on here.
I enjoyed it, man.
We went about 30 minutes over scheduled, and we're both having a good time.
I want to keep going, but I got other stuff coming up, man. We'll have to do it again, brother. I mean, there's just so much we can approach this with. I love it, man. Yeah, it was such a good interview, and I enjoyed this conversation, Jason. I have to have you back, man. Have a good one, and thank you.
All right, you too. Thanks, everybody, for listening and watching.
All right, everybody head on over to the website, check out his stuff, and, we'll do it again, brother. Shalom, peace. Jason Linett, ladies and gentlemen. I enjoyed it. The science of spirituality. I can give you the spiritual terms, right? A lot of people can. But when you can break it down to like the scientific method, that kind of science and spirituality go hand in hand. Speaking positive affirmations, speaking over yourself makes you feel a certain type of way. Why does it do it? Well, there's scientific reasons, the way that you're shaping the brain, affirmations, being hypnotized without even knowing it. You know, colors, signs, symbols, shapes, all of this kind of stuff, making you feel an idea or being welcomed or whatever, just because of using little colors and all of this kind of stuff. We're talking about branding. Man, and it's so much moving forward with branding and colors that are being used with that. It gets so deep to know why you have a tagline. Why do you remember it? Why am I remembering these songs which I don't even like, but for some reason I've heard these songs twice and I know every word? Like, why does that? You know, why am I programmed to do that? There's a science behind it. And there's spiritual thought behind that. You know, we talk about prophesying. I talk about speaking over yourself, speaking over your day, blessing it, literally speaking it out, right? What you want to accomplish. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, reshaping your mind with these positive affirmations, and then figuring out, okay, how do I effectively do this? How do I effectively or practically bring this into existence? You got these ideas, but just talking about them, it's not going to do anything. Like, it's going to reshape your brain and your expectation. My expectation brings about my manifestation, these little concepts or whatever, but it's about responding, learning, growing better. I mean, he said so much. We're talking about being empathic and using spiritual gifts, which I believe in, but a lot of it will come second nature, where you're not reliant on a miracle, where you're not reliant on empathy or whatever the case is, or like the whole luck of the draw, roll of the dice. You're not relying on that. You're relying because you've been faced with this situation 17 times and I've made the wrong decision 17 times. Let me make the right decision and see what happens. You make that decision, everything around you changes. Okay, the next time that I'm faced with that situation, for myself, for my family, for my friends, for my clients, hey, I'm dealing with this. Hey, well, let me let you know what worked for me. Let me let you know what worked for my client moving forward. And then creating that atmosphere of your business, doing it full time, moving in a place of professionalism. It's about saying yes, and it's about making mistakes, learning from them, but then doing what works over and over. Doing what works over and over. Santiago's in the chat, my brother. Consistency. If it's working, keep it up. Why stop? Why stop if it's working? If it's not working, reevaluate your game plan. Why isn't it working? Why doesn't nobody like my music? Why doesn't nobody hear about it? It could be a lot of different reasons. How can I get people to do it? How can I get people to listen? Marketing schemes, marketing plans. You know what I'm saying? Clickbait is a big thing, right? Like putting it out there and knowing that people are going to respond to controversial titles. Man, I experiment with that a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Not with my podcast so much so, but maybe so. Some of the controversial, titled episodes get more clicks, even if there's no meat in it. Really, there's no meat to it. It's not deep. It's just the concept is foreign, or people are moved by that for some reason. People eat it up. Coast to Coast AM, Alex Jones, these type of people who know how to push buttons and keep you on the edge of your seat. There's something to that sells or whatever, and learning how to kind of sell yourself, whether it's controversy or whether it's clickbait titles or interesting titles. That's one reason moving forward, like I don't number my episodes of the podcast. Most podcasts, you find they say, okay, this is episode 12 of the True Seeker podcast, of the Joe Rogan podcast. Okay, what about episode 1512? If you're on episode 1500, me personally, it's just how my mind works. I don't want to go listen to an episode you did 7 years ago. You know what I'm saying? And because you're going to be talking about current events that probably aren't relevant anymore. Maybe if you want to revisit it and you have people who just consume all of your content, it's going to be good if you number it. But for me, I can put out an episode, and some of the ones that I did 10 years ago, people are just now finding, and they're finding it relevant, and there is no association with the date. Maybe it's just me, maybe it's you, but there's an association. This is old stuff. I want the new. What are you saying now? What is Jordan Maxwell saying now? Well, it's not as good as the old stuff. Let's repackage the old stuff and kind of bring it forth, which we've tried to do, but he doesn't really go into detail about a lot of that stuff. So that's part of it. But being effective, man, being intentional with your conversation, like letting people know. I mean, there's been some key players in my life, some friends who were saying, hey, do it, man. Try it. You only got one shot, and I'm like, thinking about, you have all these reasons why you shouldn't, even though if it's a dream, but yeah, there's, I got kids, there's not going to be enough money, I might lose insurance, all of this kind of weird stuff that you have to evaluate, and maybe you should evaluate it before you step out in faith or whatever and have some kind of a, plan moving forward. But sometimes it helps because we got all these naysayers, right? We have all these people, you shouldn't do it, man. I've heard friends tell other friends not to step out and not to pursue your dream or whatever because now you have kids and now you need to focus on your kids' dream and you kind of lived your life and now it's time to focus on them. And if my friend, Drew Gower, to be precise, who was almost 400 pounds, dropped 200 pounds, grinding hard, pursuing his dreams, not giving up, he wouldn't have lost 200 pounds. He wouldn't have just put out a book. You know what I'm saying? Because those people come into your life and not even being, maybe they didn't know what they were doing. They're just talking and they don't even know how much impact. I'm pretty sure that person doesn't even remember telling him that. If you asked him, I told him not to do that. It's just in passing. But what about being intentional with speaking life into someone's life? The Bible says that the power of life and death is in the tongue. And you have that ability to look at someone and call out greatness within them. That's a spiritual gift in and of itself. To say, hey, I see a spark. I see potential in you. There's something good in there. I want to work with you and bring it out, whether it's on a private session, but just being intentional about regular conversation. That blows my mind about answering questions, about positive affirmations in conversation. That's big. And so even shout out to Drew Gower, who was a big, he played a big role in my life of moving forward to do this full time, to take on clients, to understand that the information and the things that I've learned over the years is valuable to share, to save someone from going down pitfalls and things like that, but to be able to get paid for doing what you love for a living. So shout out to him. And there's a comment here from Chris Bars, my friend here. He's been an influence. There's so many people in your life that becomes an influence. So shout out to Chris Bars, who's just like, hey man, keep it up. There's times I've thought about quitting and had those people in my corner and say, hey man, I don't know if this is going to happen, and you have all the reasons why you shouldn't. But that one person, this other source, we're talking about the point of contact, your pastor, your priest, your therapist, your counselor, whoever it is, this one person who says, yeah, but don't give up just yet. There's something great inside you. I can see it. You're on the verge of something. Don't stop. How much power does that have for you pursuing your dreams, starting your business, whatever it is, getting out of the monotony of the 9 to 5, of whatever it is, of that relationship, whatever it is, keep going. So all of that comes into play. So if we're conscious of it and what people have done to inspire us, let's return the favor. Let's return the favor to the same people. I work, Chris Bars and Drew. I've been a huge role in their life. I know it. Letting them know, look, let's do it, man. And I'm returning the favor. And other people, random people, even through the podcast, it's you know what I'm saying? It's pay it forward. Pay it forward, but pay it back too. The same people. You got these people in your life who are encouraging you, inspiring you to keep up doing great things, pursue your goals and dreams. Inspire them too. You never know who needs it, man. It's sometimes just the strongest people who we think, who are the biggest healers, who are successful in business. Comedians, man, all of these people taking their own lives and they seem to have everything together. They seem to, what I'm saying? We look at Robin Williams and things like that, and Chester Bennington and the lead singer from Audio Slave or whatever, and these people who seem to have it all together, but they're like, nope, I'm done, checking out, sorry, leaving friends and family behind, got kids, nope, hold on. Like, what do they need? What if you could have been that person that spoke life to them? Well, they're dealing with depression and you don't understand clinical depression. Yes, I do. But I understand that the words have power. That if you have somebody in your corner, have you ever talked someone out of suicide? Have you yourself ever thought about suicide? Have you ever thought about taking your own life and it was just something or someone that's like, you know what? I'm worth it. They're worth it. I'm not going to bow out prematurely. I'm making a difference. And that's why there's so much adversity towards those people making a difference. They deal with so much. You don't know about it because they're not telling you, and all of the stuff they're dealing with and having to weigh. Not everybody wears their emotions or their heart on their sleeve. Some people do a good job of pinning that stuff down and pretending to be okay. Many of us. It's crazy. It is crazy. I've dealt with it. I deal with it. You know, we're all human. So for you to be able to inspire someone to prophesy over their life, call out greatness in them, I dare you. I do it, and I'm so passionate about it because I've been in the situation where I've pointed out the negative in everyone, looked for the negative in everyone, look for the negative in every situation. You're not doing it right. You're not doing it how I would do it or how I was taught, and thinking that you were the only one right. I've been in that situation. Let me just try the opposite. Let me try to call out greatness in you. Let me try to speak life into you. I know we're in a crappy situation, but let's look for the good in it. Okay, and then you start seeing if the things you're looking at, if you look at them differently and you change the way you're looking at them, they'll change. Those so-called curses, those so-called demons, you know, that we've dealt with or we deal with, they become, you start seeing why they're there, why they're here, and maybe make friends with them. Maybe understand why these type of people keep coming in your life. Understand that moving forward so that you can make the changes moving forward. Why is everybody around me a leech? Why does everybody take and not give back? Maybe there's a reason I'm, drawing these type of friends. Like, just assessing the situation and seeing how you can change it. And the power of life and death, again, is in the tongue. And you can change so much by speaking out those affirmations over yourself. Depression, even like you just don't feel like it. Slap yourself in the face. Get it together, man. Psych yourself up. Get in the zone. Lift some weights. Put on some good music. The power in music, right? You can put on a song that will just motivate you, amp you up, bring you back to a good headspace by putting on that music. That's why I don't do destructive music. That's why I don't curse in my music. That's why I don't tear people down in my music. It's because I know the power of it, the power of life and death. Prophesy of yourself. I don't feel like it today. And I've had a run of several days in the past where I don't feel like it. What do? Do you just give in? Well, you don't feel like it today. So what's that mean? You gonna feel like it tomorrow? You don't know that, maybe. But today is the day that you have to make that choice. So prophesy of yourself. Speak to yourself. Command your body to line up with the word of God. Command your body to, start feeling better. Call in those clients. Call in that podcast, that video, those partners, those supporters, all of that stuff, man. Speak to the things that are not as though they were. With that, I'm going to say peace and shalom. I really enjoyed this episode. This was an amazing guest today. Like I said, there's a reason that he won the 2017 Hypnotist of the Year. The guy knows his stuff. And I don't think there's anything that exists that isn't spiritual or like multi-layered, but I love looking at the physical side of it because my mind goes straight back to spiritual, goes straight back to scripture, all of that kind of stuff. But it was a really good episode. So, make sure you guys share this out with somebody who can use it. And I hope that you're encouraged. I hope that you pursue your dreams in 2019, 2020, wherever you are listening to this. Moving forward, it's going to be good. Greater things are still to come. God is not done with you yet. Understand that, know it, know who you are in Christ and the power that you have and the calling that you have, that you were created to do good things. That's why I like the Bible. That's why I like Jesus and the light and love, because I'm encouraged by it. It encourages me to be a good person. It encourages me to know that somebody cares for me. I may be stuck around all these people in a certain situation who don't give a damn about me, but I know that there's 1 or 2 people, 3 people in the spirit of God and Christ and the Holy Spirit who love me and who have sent me here to do great things, and I'm going to do it so that I can move forward with that confidence to know that, hey, I'm connected and I'm protected by the hand of the divine, and know that we're here to do great things in the earth. And I won't stop until I'm done. You can't shut me up. There's nothing you can do to stop me. So embracing that, not just me, but you too, moving forward, embrace that. Again, thank you guys for supporting my work via Patreon. If you would like to join with us and the whole community aspect, help me build what we're building here, patreon.com/truthseeker. That link is in the description. You get access to a whole bunch of stuff, all my music, the Thursday night School of the Mystics. I'm going to be putting out a lot more material here. I just have to articulate it and get it out of me. It's in there. It's coming out. Just got to find the time to do that. So there's new meditations available. If you haven't heard that, I highly suggest that you listen to some of the meditations that are available on my website. The new music, got a new album that just came out. And I love just the impact of that. Music was created with intention to help you, to encourage you, to equip you, and to just everything is involved around encounter with God, with the divine, with your higher self, with angels, with the beautiful benevolent beings who are here to assist you. And guess what? It's working. It was created with intention. It was birthed out of intention, and it was a birth out of experience, and it's going forth doing the same thing. I encourage you to check that out. I guarantee you it will bless you and it will change your life. With that being said, I'm going to say peace and shalom. If anybody would like to purchase a private consultation from me, a private session, that is available on my website now. I'm taking on clients to train you to do what I'm doing, to move forward in business, step out in whatever it is that God has put you here to do. Find out what it is and take off and run with it. With that, I'm going to say peace and shalom, and we'll see you guys again very soon. Peace, peace.
Your way so much higher than mine, so much higher than mine, so much deeper than mine, so much deeper than mine.
Well, that does it for this episode, folks. To hear more episodes of the Truth Seeker podcast, head over to truthseeker.com. And if you're wanting to support the show and get rewards, go to our Patreon page at patreon.com/truthseeker.